And this is Cassandra. This is the fake death service you booked with us. The time of death was at the wedding half a month later. The way of death was suicide by jumping into the sea. The fake death is you. Please confirm the signature here." Cassandra nodded, signing her name directly at the end of the document. On the bustling street, Cassandra was walking home alone when she looked up to see Cornelius and her proposal looping on a nearby building's advertising screen. In the video, he knelt on one knee, but the hand holding the ring of the person who had always been steady trembled slightly, and the moment he heard her say "I was willing," the tears he had accumulated in his eyes also fell. The beautiful scene provoked the two girls next to Cassandra to hug each other and be envious. "Ah, Cornelius loves Cassandra so much." "Yes, Mr. Cornelius is really a god of war. I heard that he and Miss Cassandra were childhood sweethearts. And at the age of 17 he couldn't wait to confess to her. And at the age of 20 he made a crown for her out of the most expensive pink diamond in the world, saying that she would always be his princess. And at the age of 23 Ms. Cassandra there was a car accident. The special blood-type blood bank was in an emergency. Mr. Cornelius donated blood to her despite the opposition, and almost drained the blood to save the person. And at the age of 26, he finally succeeded in marrying the girl he loved the most. How could there be such a man in the world who loves his wife? Cassandra didn't listen any further, her eyes lowering to hide the self-deprecation in her eyes. Everyone is envious of her love with Cornelius, and everyone is saying that Cornelius loves her miserably. So no one would have thought that such a man would hide a small internet celebrity Jinwoo from her for 3 years. Found out countless times that he said that the company had something to do on the night. In fact, when he was entangled with the little internet celebrity, her heart was like being chiseled through by a sharp blade, dripping with blood, and the flesh and blood were blurred. As she looked through the unsightly photos, she remembered that when her parents divorced at the age of 15, and both sides were fighting to the death over not wanting her, it was Cornelius who pushed open the door, took her hand and said, "You don't want her, I want it." From that day on, Cornelius gave her all her heart. He had broken 3 ribs in a fight for her. He remembered every period of her period. His circle of friends was full of her, and all the brothers around him said that he was Cassandra's love brain. And when he put the wedding ring on his hand, he kissed her while crying, and his words were full of pleading, begging her to love him forever for the rest of her life, begging her to never leave him, and if she did leave him, he would go crazy. Obviously, he first said that he couldn't do without her, but now he betrayed her first. Since this is the case, she faked her death and fled, changed her name and surname, and completely disappeared into his world, so that he could never find herself. Cassandra reached out to wipe the dampness from the corners of her eyes, and was about to lift her feet to leave, when the Maybach in front of her suddenly braked, and a tall figure opened the door of the back seat and walked towards her. "Cassandra, didn't you say that you would wait for me at home, and when I was done with work, I would pick you up to try on the wedding dress? Why did you run out alone?" Cornelius took her hand as she spoke, and quickly took off her coat and draped it over her after noticing that her fingertips were cold. "Your hands are so cold, and you don't wear a coat. Do you want to get sick and die of me?" Cassandra didn't speak, just looked up at him quietly. The love in his eyes didn't seem to be fake, but it was precisely because of this that she became more and more puzzled that a person could fall in love with 2 people at the same time. Cornelius tightened her coat and was about to take her to the car, when the 2 girls opposite heard the movement and subconsciously turned their heads to look, and when they saw that it was them, their eyes lit up. They stepped forward excitedly, their faces flushed, and they stammered, "Why, hi, are you Cassandra and Cornelius?" "Aye, we are your CP fans. Can we take a photo with you?" Cassandra didn't want to disappoint them, and nodded after a moment's silence. After getting permission, the 2 girls gathered them in the middle and looked at the camera. Cornelius didn't like to take pictures, but she obediently grabbed Cassandra and followed her to the camera. After the group photo, the 2 girls kept thanking the 2 of them with red faces, hoping that they would grow old and have a happy marriage, to remain a devoted couple to the end of their lives. Cassandra looked up at Cornelius beside him, and the moment they looked at him, he evoked a doting smile that was as tender as water. It seems to agree with the words of the 2 girls, only she knew that they wouldn't be able to get to the end of it. In front of the bridal shop, Cassandra got out of the car, and the clerk who had been waiting at the door of the store hurriedly greeted him, with a little envy in his tone. "Miss Cassandra and Mr. Cornelius have 1,000 custom-made wedding dresses ready to try them on and see which one you like." She didn't speak, just looked at Cornelius behind him, who was looking at something with his phone, his eyes full of unconcealable desire. The kind of look she had only seen in those bed photos of him and the little internet celebrity. After perceiving her gaze, he hurriedly put away his mobile phone and walked over, with a hint of apology on his face. "Cassandra, I'm sorry, the company suddenly has a bit of an urgent matter that I need to deal with. I asked the driver to wait for you here, and after you try on the wedding dress in a while, let him send you back." After saying that, he kissed her forehead, and hurriedly got into another car, leaving her alone. The clerk hurriedly walked up and said tentatively, "Miss Cassandra, do you need to try on the wedding dress now?" Cassandra retracted her gaze and shook her head. "Don't try. I don't want any of this. After all, when the time comes, there will only be one dead bride at their wedding." Cassandra got into the car home, and as soon as she turned on her phone, Vanessa's text message popped up. It's a screenshot of a chat. In the picture, Vanessa sits on the ground delicately in a black silk rabbit costume, looking at the camera with a confused look. "If the owner can come within 20 minutes, the little rabbit will be eaten by the owner." Below, Cornelius' black avatar is sent with a short two-word "wait for me." Cassandra turned off the screen and closed her eyes, struggling to suppress the dense stinging pain in her heart. She thought that after seeing so many photos, she would get used to it and become numb. But the uncontrollable pain still swept through the whole body and invaded the bone marrow. Finally, she forced herself to close her eyes and turned off her phone. In the middle of the night, Cassandra curled up on the edge of her bed with red eyes and fell asleep, while her phone on her pillow began to vibrate every hour until the next morning. When she woke up and clicked on it, she realized that from last night until this morning, Vanessa had been sending her a picture every hour. "All of used condoms. He asked me for the whole night last night, and he played all kinds of positions on me so that I couldn't get out of bed." "Did he do this to you?" Cassandra didn't make any moves, but looked at these pictures dozens of times over and over again. When Cornelius returned, Cassandra was lying on the bed with red eyes and a white knuckle in his hand holding his phone. His heart jumped suddenly, and he hurriedly walked over and hugged the person in his arms. And his tone was tense. "Cassandra, why are you crying?" "Did she cry?" Cassandra came back to his senses and looked at him, and then touched his face, only to realize that he had already burst into tears. After a long time, she smiled lightly, but the smile still did not hide the sadness in her eyes. "Nothing, just a set of very touching photos." Cornelius touched her face and said dotingly, "What picture is crying like this, baby? Do you want to feel sorry for your husband?" As soon as Cassandra was about to speak, the butler knocked on the open door and respectfully said, "Sir, the car is ready." He hummed and turned his head to kiss the person in his arms. "Cassandra, it was my bad yesterday to leave you alone in the bridal shop. As compensation, I will take you to the auction. I will buy you whatever you want." "Okay." Cassandra didn't answer, but he picked her up and walked her out of the room as she acquiesced, and helped her choose clothes, jewelry, and shoes himself. At the auction, to keep Cassandra happy, Cornelius spent a lot of money on all the treasures throughout the first half, even if she wasn't interested in them. At halftime, several men came up behind him. "Cornelius brothers. I said who took everything in the first half so arrogantly." It turned out to be brother Cornelius. "I still want to buy a gift for my grandmother to celebrate her birthday, but I don't get anything." Sure enough, the name of this favorite wife madman is well deserved. "Brother Cornelius, in the second half, you will give me a chance to shoot something too." Several men joke with Cornelius, who only glances at them before retracting his gaze and peeling an orange for Cassandra. "You don't have this chance in the second half. All the lots today belong to my Cassandra." Several men wailed a few times and covered their chests again and again, but they had to bow down. Cornelius' lips rose slightly, but he ignored them, only doting on the orange and bringing it to Cassandra with a "please." Cassandra shook her head with a faint expression. "I don't have an appetite. You can eat it yourself." Soon, the second half of the auction began. At this moment, the door suddenly opened, and a waiter respectfully greeted a woman in a short red skirt and walked in. In the next second, Cassandra felt the body of Cornelius next to her stiffen. She looked up, and Vanessa's bright face appeared in front of her eyes. Vanessa took out a few red coins from her bag and stuffed them into the waiter's chest, then smiled, and before the waiter could react, she sat down next to Cornelius. Those present gasped when they saw this scene and guessed Vanessa's identity. How can this little internet celebrity be so bold as to dare to sit next to Mr. Cornelius? Isn't she afraid that Mr. Cornelius will ban her in a fit of rage? "I heard that there is a big man behind her. You didn't see the brand name jewelry and bags in the room when she was live broadcasting." Cassandra was about to withdraw her gaze when Vanessa unabashedly took Cornelius' hand and placed it under her skirt. Cornelius's hand stiffened suddenly, and he subconsciously wanted to withdraw it, but Vanessa smiled and held him down, then moved slightly. Eventually, Cornelius paused, not retracting his hand. Cassandra tilted her head sharply, trying to hold her trembling hand. In the second half of the auction, Cassandra was distracted until the finale of the auction item came on, and the exclamations and inhalations around her pulled her back from her pain. Cassandra looked up to see a dazzling necklace lying quietly on a flannel. The auctioneer next to him is passionately introducing the origin of this necklace, which is rumored to be Queen Elizabeth's favorite necklace, implying loyal love. Perhaps sensing Cassandra's interest in the necklace as well, Cornelius didn't hesitate to hold up the sign, 10 million, then a female voice rang out next to him, 30 million. As soon as he turned his head, he saw Vanessa next to him also holding up the sign, and sensing his displeased gaze, she smiled seductively with spring in her eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Cornelius, my boyfriend loves me too, so he wants to give me this necklace too. Cornelius blackened his face, 50 million. 100 million, 150 million. Finally, Cornelius made a gesture directly. The auctioneer in front of him knocked on the auction hammer excitedly. Light the sky lantern, Mr. Cornelius lit the sky lantern. Congratulations to Mr. Cornelius for this true love. When the applause rang out, Cornelius quietly withdrew his hand and kissed Cassandra next to him. Well, wait for me here, I'll go get you a necklace. Cassandra watched as he got up and left. And Vanessa across from her stood up and gave her a meaningful look. It wasn't until everyone was gone that Cassandra let go of the hand he had been clenching tightly, his nails digging deep into the flesh, spilling a little blood. But as if she didn't feel the pain, she got up and walked out. There is still a text message on the screen of the phone that has not been turned off in his hand. Underground parking, maybe the guests are gone, and there is only one Maybach in the empty parking lot. Whenever someone tried to get closer, they would be stopped by the young driver standing in the distance and persuaded to leave, so no one noticed that the car was shaking gently. The woman's gasps and the man's muffled grunt mingled and reached Cassandra's ears. She suddenly lost all her strength, leaned weakly against the pillar, and stared directly at the scene in front of her. The door of the back seat was just open, and the two people inside were naked. And Vanessa's legs were tightly locked around the man's thin waist, whimpering and sobbing. Lighten up, master, the little rabbit can't stand it. Cornelius' eyes darkened. Isn't this what you want first? No matter how heavy it is, you can put up with it. After speaking, he snorted and suddenly hugged her waist. Cassandra covered her mouth and fled the scene in embarrassment. I don't know how long she ran, but she finally sat down in the stairwell and pressed her heart hard, bent over and gasped for breath, and big tears fell out. I thought the scene at the auction would be painful enough, but the scene of Cornelius and Vanessa in the car suffocated her even more. After she was with Cornelius, he was so innocent, holding her hand would blush, kissing her would make her tremble, and even the first time between the two, he endured and endured. And waited until she agreed to his proposal before moving her. She smiled and said how could he bear it so much, but he just hugged her in his arms and kissed her, and said in a hoarse voice, baby, no man can bear it in the face of the woman he loves. It's just that I love you too much, so I want to wait until the dust settles, and I don't want you to regret it. He cherished her so much. At that time her heart was full of warmth, and she only felt that she really loved the right person. But now the reality slapped her hard. She covered her face in despair and cried down the stairwell. After some time, Cassandra finally stood up numbly and walked to the bathroom. Just then, the phone in her hand vibrated a little. Vanessa sent another picture of the aftermath of the car, which was in a mess in the back seat and with broken stockings piled up in the corner. This car is full of the smell of our mingling, and Cornelius promised to give me your necklace. And now that true love is mine. Cassandra didn't look at it anymore and turned off the phone. When she came out of the bathroom with her makeup back up, she finally met Cornelius, who came back to her. There was nothing in his hands, and the next second, she was held in the arms of the man, and a vague smell of perfume hit the tip of her nose. She was just about to push him away when the man's apologetic voice sounded above her head. Cassandra, that necklace is a little flawed and not suitable for you. Will I buy you a brighter one next time? She took a deep breath, looked up and choked. What if I just want that necklace? Cornelius looked at her little face covered with tears. His heart seemed to be strangled by something, and he hurriedly coaxed softly, baby, Cassandra, don't cry. Okay, that necklace really doesn't suit you. I'll send someone to buy a new one for you now. Okay. Hearing this, she smiled. In the past, he would give her what she wanted immediately, but now what she wants, he refuses in every way for the sake of another woman. It's not just his body, it seems that he doesn't even have his heart anymore. Looking at her like this, his heart also hurt. And when he was about to say something more, she pushed him away, with a hint of exhaustion in her words. Forget it, I don't want it anymore. Looking at her lost and departing back, he subconsciously wanted to chase after her. When he saw her suddenly stop, and when he followed her gaze, he saw Vanessa just passing in front of them, with that true love around her neck. His face turned pale, and he was about to say something when Cassandra brushed Vanessa's shoulder as if he hadn't seen it. After seeing Cassandra's back disappear completely, Cornelius grabbed Vanessa's hand tightly. Are you crazy? I told you, don't appear in front of Cassandra, she's my bottom line, Vanessa was yelled at. But she didn't mean any grievances, just smiled slightly. I'm sorry, she didn't see it, I won't next time. After speaking, she half faded her neckline slightly. In order to make amends, I will compensate you tonight, I have a bigger surprise. Cornelius Adams' apple rolled, and her eyes darkened. Cornelius didn't come back that night, leaving only one sentence that the company had an urgent matter to deal with. Cassandra knew he was lying, but instead of questioning or making a noise, Cassandra went about her own thing in silence. Since she was going to fake her death and leave Cornelius forever, she would have to destroy all traces of her in this world, and when the time came, she would leave him no memories except a fake corpse. It took her 3 hours to tidy up and burn everything she had. Then, a large box was dragged out from the bottom of the bookcase. Inside is Cornelius' birthday present for her over the past decade, at the age of 15. He sent her his first love letter, and his strong love was hidden in his youthful handwriting. At the age of 18, he gave her the first pair of crystal slippers in his life, saying that he would walk with her for the rest of his life. At the age of 20, he gave her a pink diamond crown and said that she would always be the little princess he held in the palm of his hand. At the age of 22, he gave her a diamond ring that he had designed and made, saying that she had finally reached the legal age of marriage, and that he would propose marriage every year until she was willing to marry him. Cassandra wrapped these gifts one by one without hesitation and hung them on the internet for 9 yuan and 9 free shipping. Worth hundreds of millions of dollars but only 9 yuan 9. The gifts she hung on the internet were soon sold out. She called someone to come and collect the goods, and was about to go back to her room to rest. When the door was slammed open, Cornelius walked in from outside in a panic, grabbed her hand in a trembling tone, and said, Cassandra, what do you mean you sold all the gifts I gave you for $9? Cassandra looked up at him. He looked like he had rushed back as fast as he could. His coat was all drenched, and he didn't care. His face was full of panic. She asked softly, how do you know? Public opinion is fermenting. This matter has been on the hot search. Cassandra was about to say something when he hugged her, trembling words filled with fear. Cassandra, what do you mean, you sold all of that? Are you going to leave me? Are you not going to want me anymore? What did I do wrong? Don't leave me. I'll change it. Okay. In the end, there was a hint of crying in his words. She just looked ahead calmly, her eyebrows stained with a touch of self-deprecation. If he was so afraid of her leaving him, why did he have to raise a woman outside? It's that he's too confident and thinks he's hiding it well. I still think she's too stupid to find out. Now he just sensed that she was leaving, and he panicked like this. Then she was looking forward to seeing her corpse at the wedding scene. She slowly pushed him away, and said calmly, it's not what you think. I just don't like it anymore, so I just sell it. What's more, we're going to get married, for no reason. Why should I leave you? Have you done anything to be sorry for me? Cornelius's heart was pounding when he heard the previous paragraph, and he just wanted to breathe a sigh of relief. But when he heard the second half of the sentence, he couldn't help but change his expression slightly. He squeezed her hand and swore repeatedly, without the baby, I definitely didn't do anything to be sorry for you. You know how much I love you. Cassandra pulled her lips and smiled. Since there isn't, then what are you worried about? Okay, it's late, I should go and rest. With that, she turned to leave. Cornelius panicked, but told herself over and over again that yes, they were going to get married soon. Soon Cassandra was his man. There will be no change, nothing will change. Because of her series of unexpected actions, Cornelius has been inexplicably uneasy. So much so that he stayed with her all night, until dawn. Cornelius's phone lit up, and the moment he clicked on the phone, the sleepiness in his eyes instantly disappeared. He glanced at the girl next to him and kissed her before quietly getting out of bed and leaving. The next second Cassandra also opened his eyes and glanced at his phone. Just now, she received a message from the fake death agency on her mobile phone. saying that a body very similar to her was found in the morgue of the hospital, and the details have been done, hoping that she can come to the scene to see what else needs to be improved. In the morgue, there was a corpse that was very similar to hers. If she hadn't been standing here, she would have thought that the corpse in front of her was herself. It seems that Cornelius will not be suspicious by then. Now everything is ready, only the east wind is owed. After a brief communication with the staff, she returned to the first floor, and when she happened to pass the obstetrics and gynecology department, she inadvertently glanced inside, just a glance, but she instantly froze in place, not far away. Cornelius was helping Vanessa, whose lower abdomen was slightly bulging, out of the obstetrics and gynecology unit. She saw Cornelius walking out of Vanessa as she treated her like a treasure, her face beaming with the joy of being a new father. Is Vanessa pregnant? Is the child Cornelius? They have children. Cassandra didn't know how she got back to the villa. In the dark villa, only the screen of her phone lit up flickered with a faint light, and just as the screen of her phone was about to go off, Vanessa's text message suddenly popped up on the interface. It's a pregnancy test form, and a link to the live stream. I'm pregnant, just 3 months old. The father of the child is very happy, by the way. Tonight I want to celebrate this happy event with the father of the child and the fans. If you are also happy for us, you can also come to our live broadcast room. Cassandra's stiff fingers moved, and the chill of her fingertips instantly passed from her fingers to her heart. When she clicked into Vanessa's live broadcast room, she subconsciously clicked the screen recording button at the top of the screen. Soon Vanessa, who was wearing a maternity dress, appeared in front of the camera. With a smile on her face as a first-time mother, holding a pregnancy test sheet to share the joy of her pregnancy with fans, the barrage was full of words of blessing. Suddenly, Vanessa had a large, bony hand beside her, which was all too familiar to Cassandra. Chapter 6. That hand had kissed her, hugged her, wiped her tears, and put a ring on her, but now, the hand gently caressed Vanessa's lower abdomen. Even if you don't rest, the child in the belly must rest. Good, go to sleep. Hearing such a low and deafening voice, netizens exploded and begged Vanessa to let her brother-in-law show his face too. One of the countless barrages that made my brother-in-law show up suddenly popped up. Did I hear it wrong? Why does it sound so much like Mr. Cornelius? But soon this barrage was drowned out by other barrages. Vanessa smiled sheepishly and let Cornelius take her hand. Your brother-in-law is not good to show up. Big man, you are so considerate. Fortunately, the barrage didn't dwell on this issue anymore, but clamored to hear how Vanessa was with her brother-in-law. After several identical barrages were sent out in a row, Vanessa took a deep look at the side before smiling and saying to netizens, your brother-in-law, he loves me so much. He sent me a love letter to confess when he was in high school. He was afraid that I would refuse, so he stumbled and prepared for a day, and even rehearsed dozens of times. Or I took the initiative to take his love letter and said I was willing. As soon as these words came out, netizens sent out a barrage that was so sweet that I was killed. Cassandra's grip on the phone suddenly tightened, and an indescribable sourness welled up in her heart. How much Cornelius loved Vanessa to tell her everything about their past. Smack, when the tears fell onto the screen, Vanessa suddenly said that she was going to go down. Netizens listened energetically and expressed their reluctance. Vanessa glanced at the side in embarrassment, spread her hands and said helplessly, it's not that I'm going to go down, but your brother-in-law is pestering me. And it's time for our little couple to be in love. Netizens who understood the meaning of the words screamed one after another, saying that they also wanted to participate. Vanessa smiled and covered her mouth, refusing. I don't want to teach bad kids. Some netizens came up with an idea, saying that it was okay to only turn off the picture and not the sound. Vanessa was about to say something when Cornelius reached out and turned off the picture. Then came an exclamation. Ah, kid. Netizens boiled instantly. Cassandra's hand holding the phone began to tremble, and tears blurred her vision. But Cornelius and Vanessa's tangled voices reached her ears through thin screens, and then turned into sharp blades that stabbed into her heart. And in the video, the voices of the two are getting louder and louder. I can't eat it. Well, isn't this something you can eat? Unable to look at it any longer, Cassandra abruptly turned off her phone. She stared at the dark ceiling, and it was a long time before she moved her stiff fingers. It's almost there. I'm about to leave. Cornelius didn't return to the villa for a few days, and Vanessa's text message gave her the answer. In the photo, Cornelius is seen kneeling on one knee in front of Vanessa, with her ear pressed against her lower abdomen, listening carefully to the child's movements. She closed her eyes, but not a single tear could come out. Chapter 7. Until Cassandra's birthday is approaching, Cornelius finally hurried back and prepared a big birthday party for her. When Cassandra came down in her gown, Cornelius was waiting downstairs. She glanced up at him, and her eyes were extraordinarily calm, even too calm. Cornelius' heart jumped in anticipation when she saw her like this. In his memory, Cassandra was always bright and flamboyant, not pale and lifeless like this. He subconsciously wanted to take her into his arms and care. But she turned around and avoided his embrace, her voice hoarse. "I've been a little unwell lately, don't touch me. It's not good in case I infect you." After saying that, she stopped looking at his stiff hand in mid-air and turned to leave. Cassandra was like an outsider at the end of the feast, watching Cornelius celebrate her birthday and confess his love for her. The final finale was, of course, his birthday present. Every year, he prepares a birthday gift for himself, each one unique. The necklace given this time was leaked by the European royal family, and it is priceless. As soon as she took it out, she heard a loud gasp of amazement from the entire banquet hall. She lowered her eyes to hide the sarcasm in her eyes, and did not take the necklace that Cornelius had handed her. Cornelius didn't think much of it, just thought that she was sick and unwell, and after putting a necklace on her, she would end the dinner early and send her back to rest. But as soon as she was put in the car, Cornelius's cell phone rang. He glanced at it, and then said to her apologetically, "Baby, I still have something to do. You go back and have a good rest first. And when I'm done, I'll come back to accompany you." She didn't break it down and nodded. With her permission, he kissed her and turned away. As soon as he got out of the car, Vanessa's text message was sent to Cassandra's phone on time. "Keep up with him. There will be surprises waiting for you." She was silent for a long time, and finally chose to have the driver turn around and follow Cornelius's car. Soon, Cassandra saw Cornelius' car stop outside Vanessa's villa and hurried into the villa without even having time to close the door. Cassandra's grip on the phone tightened, and she got out of the car, perhaps in too much of a hurry. The door of the villa was not closed. She looked up, and after seeing the scene inside, she froze in place. Inside is a birthday party. Not only that, but the people at the birthday party, in addition to Cornelius and Vanessa, also all of Cornelius' brothers, and even Cornelius's father, Cornelius's mom, came. Reason told her to leave quickly, because if she didn't leave, she would never be able to bear what happened next. But her feet seemed to be nailed to death, making her unable to move. She just stood there and watched as Cornelius put an identical necklace around Vanessa's neck. Several brothers next to him also coaxed, "My sister-in-law is so beautiful to wear." Hearing this, Cornelius gave them a cold look. "What's the call? There's only one of your sisters-in-law." Only then did the brothers make a zipper movement with their hands. "Brother Cornelius, don't worry, we'll just scream in private, and we won't let your heart and soul know about it. A few of us have strict mouths. Since Brother Cornelius brought someone to us half a year ago, we have sewed our mouths tightly." Cornelius's mom followed suit and put the Kenneth family heirloom bracelet on Vanessa's wrist. "Although you have been hiding behind your back, as long as the child is born. In my heart, you are also my daughter-in-law." Cassandra couldn't listen to the rest of the words anymore. Her clenched hand dropped suddenly, and she turned away without saying a word. She walked faster and faster, as if a demon was chasing her behind her, and she suddenly ran faster and faster, and finally fell to the ground. In an instant, thunder and lightning pierced the night sky, followed by heavy rain, sweeping like a raging wave, and the streets became blurred in an instant. As Cassandra's clothes wet from the rain, she looked at her broken palms and remembered the first time Cornelius had brought her home to her parents a long time ago. Cornelius's mom solemnly put the heirloom bracelet into her hand and said, "I only recognize you as a daughter-in-law in my life." His brother also looked at her with a respectful smile. "A sister-in-law is a sister-in-law for life. We only recognize you as a sister-in-law." But now Cornelius's mom also regards another woman as his daughter-in-law, and his brother also calls another woman his sister-in-law. They are like Cornelius, who say they love her and respect her, but in their hearts they approve of the other person. And the saddest thing is that their conversation just now clearly told her that they knew about Vanessa's existence before she did, but they all helped Cornelius hide it from her. She is the only fool in the world. She squatted on the road like this. And the pedestrians were in a hurry, but no one came to hold an umbrella for her. After the heavy rain, Cassandra fell seriously ill with a high fever and a groggy body. In the villa, Cornelius roared under his breath, "She's been burning for 3 days. Why hasn't the fever gone away?" The doctors were all shimping, but no one could say why, and the air pressure in the room was so low that it was almost suffocating. Finally, he swept everyone away with a big wave of his hand with a low face. and finally sat back in his chair, holding Cassandra's hand, his eyes reddening. "Baby, get better soon." But the woman on the big bed still had a pale face, her eyes closed, and she didn't move. Another night, Cassandra, whose fever had finally subsided, woke up in a daze, only to find himself weak and his throat dry and bitter. She tried to make a sound, but suddenly there was a loud crash outside the door. Then Cornelius' stoic voice reached her ears through the door. "Didn't I tell you not to appear in front of her?" Then Vanessa's aggrieved voice came. "But, the child in my womb wants to see his father, and I have a surprise for you. Do you want to see it?" Outside the door, only the grinding of clothes and the sound of low breathing remained. "Why are you wearing clothes like this?" Vanessa laughed, her voice soft enough to make her legs soften. "Don't you like it?" All she could answer was the man's heavier gasps. Cassandra couldn't listen anymore and was about to bury herself under the covers when the door was suddenly pushed open. "It's so cold outside. Can we go in and do a good job?" She suddenly opened her eyes wide to see the reflection on the floor-to-ceiling window, and saw two entangled figures lying under the sofa at the foot of her bed in the faint light. The rain outside was getting heavier, and Cassandra's heart was getting colder and colder as if she could hear it through the glass. And the cold vapor poured in from the unclosed windows. After recovering from a serious illness, Cassandra became even weaker, her eyes were gone, and she curled up on the chaise longue wrapped in a thick blanket, staring blankly at the scenery outside the window. Compared to her calmness, Cornelius's eyes were full of worry and panic. From the time Cassandra woke up to now, she had barely eaten anything, and no matter how much he coaxed, she was indifferent. The stomach-nourishing porridge changed bowl after bowl, but she still wore that posture and didn't even look at him. Cornelius was in a hurry, and seeing that tomorrow was the wedding, she still looked listless. Cornelius panicked, and he tried to suppress the strangeness, and walked over to her and half knelt down, his words pleading. "Cassandra, would you like to have a bite to eat? I know you can't eat when you're sick, but your body matters. I'm afraid you're going to have a fever like this, and if something else happens, I'll really go crazy." Cassandra's eyes moved, a hint of mockery in her eyes. In the next second, a tear flowed down the corner of his eye. She subconsciously wanted to wipe away the tears, but he was one step ahead of her, carefully trembling and wiping the wetness away with his fingertips. "Cassandra, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me. If you have any grievances, just say it, don't hold it in your heart." He was about to hug her, but she dodged her sideways. She was finally willing to set her eyes on him, but her tone was so detached. "Cornelius, come with me to the beach." Cornelius' outstretched hand stiffened slightly, and he looked at her in surprise. "Baby, aren't you afraid of water? So you have never liked the beach?" Cassandra said lightly. "Suddenly I want to go and see it again. After all, the way she faked her death was to commit suicide by jumping into the sea." Hearing this, Cornelius didn't say anything, but immediately asked the butler to prepare the car. Along the way, he drove with one hand while holding Cassandra's hand tightly, and she didn't break free like she had before. Cornelius looked at her a little more obediently, and a smile instantly appeared in her eyes, and she talked about her past love deeds. At that time, he was full of her. So he remembered the episode that even Cassandra was almost forgotten, from when she was a kid and laughed and gave him lemon candy, to when she held his hand for the first dance in high school, to when they were in a long-distance relationship. She took a one-night plane to see him. "It's obviously the girl I've held in the palm of my hand since I was a child, but in order to see me, I took such a long plane, and I swore at that time that I would never let you suffer a little again." "Cassandra," Cornelius parked her car by the sea and looked at her with love in her eyes. "I will always love you." Cassandra smiled along with him, but with a hint of sarcasm in her smile. "There are so many lies that I have deceived myself." The two of them snuggled up to the beach, quietly looking at the calm sea in front of them, enjoying this moment of tranquility. At that moment, Cornelius' phone suddenly vibrated wildly. He didn't even look at it, and hung up the phone. But the person on the other end persevered, calling one after another. Finally, he glanced at the notes and walked to the side to connect. "I don't know what the man on the other end said." Cornelius's expression changed slightly, and his eyes were stained with desire. At the same time, Cassandra also received a text message from Vanessa. "Cassandra, even if you get married tomorrow, believe it or not, he'll come over with me as soon as I call him. If you are interested, you should have given me Mrs. Cornelius's position earlier. This isn't the first time Vanessa has forced her to step aside, but it's the first time she's replied to Vanessa, "Yes, as you wish." In the next second, the man who hung up the phone hurried over, and his face was apologetic. "Cassandra, I'm sorry, I have an urgent." "Cornelius, do you remember what I told you on the day I proposed?" Cassandra's sudden question made his heart tighten. I said that if one day you change your mind, you tell me that I won't pester you anymore, but if you lie to me, I will leave you forever. There was a smile in her eyes, but it didn't reach the bottom of her eyes. Cornelius suddenly clenched his phone. His knuckles were so hard that they turned white, and he was silent for a long time before he rubbed her head tremblingly. Cassandra, I love you so much, how could I lie to you? In an instant, the last bit of love she had for him completely vanished. Cassandra chuckled. Aren't you in the company and aren't leaving? Cornelius looked at her calm appearance, and a nameless panic swept through his body, and he suddenly did not dare to leave. I'm afraid that if I leave, they will never see each other. Remembering the phone call just now, his hand holding the phone loosened again. Cassandra is here, what could happen? And, tomorrow they will be married. Thinking of this, he breathed a sigh of relief. Cassandra, you go back early after you finish watching the sea. And we'll see you at the wedding tomorrow. After saying that, he turned to get into the car and completely disappeared from her sight. Cassandra just watched his departing back, not stopping or retaining. 10 minutes later, a car stopped on the beach. A man stepped forward and said, Ms. Cassandra, all your information in the country has been cancelled. Your new ID card, new mobile phone and plane ticket are also ready for you, and from now on, no one in the world will be able to find you. She lowered her eyes and took it, then handed her phone to the other party. Tomorrow, send the fake corpse directly to the wedding site, and this mobile phone, help me hand it over to the groom. She wanted him to know how Vanessa was provoking her again and again these days. She wanted him to know that she had committed suicide in the sea when he had once again lied to another woman and left herself. She wanted him to know that today was the last time they would see each other. For the rest of his life, he will be in pain for this moment, and his liver and intestines will be broken. After explaining everything, Cassandra took all the new identification and got into an unlicensed car. Driver, go to the airport. After the night, in the distance, there will be a golden morning glow. The other side. The woman kept crying and begging for mercy, but she couldn't let the man on her body relax. It wasn't until Cornelius snorted that Vanessa's hand around his neck fell to the pillow. He chuckled and began kissing her indiscriminately. Squeamish, Vanessa snorted, raising her kiss-strewn hand to scribble on his chest, feigning sourness. No matter how squeamish I am, you're about to marry someone more squeamish than me. His eyes sank and he kissed her. As I said, I can give you anything but fame, and even if I'm getting married, I still love you and the kids. His large hand gently stroked her bulging lower abdomen. Vanessa smiled seductively and lifted her long legs to hook his waist. Then you have to love me well. Cornelius grabbed her hand with one hand and pressed it against the top of her head, pushing harder underneath her. The man's muffled grunt and the woman's gasping were intertwined again. On the eve of the wedding, Cornelius finally got off Vanessa and began to stand in front of the mirror to tidy up his groom outfit. Looking at the sleeping woman on the bed, his eyes softened, and he kissed Vanessa on the lips before quietly closing the door. It wasn't until sitting on the bus to the cruise ship that Cornelius finally restarted his phone, which had been turned off overnight. He thought he would see the countless text messages and phone calls from Cassandra. And he even thought of an excuse, but the moment he turned on the phone, his hands stiffened. The interface is empty. He quickly dialed Cassandra's phone number, one after another, but no one answered. His heart was inexplicably flustered, but he still reassured himself, Cassandra has been in poor health these days. Maybe he is still resting. Thinking of this, he put his phone on his lap and looked up at the beach outside, not far from the beach. Several ambulances and police stopped not far from the beach, and a group of people gathered around the sea. As if they had fished something out of the sea, his heart stopped inexplicably for a moment, and he subconsciously moved his eyes. The wedding scene was adorned with Cassandra's favorite blue roses and blue phalaenopsis. Next to him, a pianist is playing Cassandra's favorite piano tunes. Under the stage, all the guests and the media looked at the door expectantly. Everything is so beautiful. Now it's just the bride. The hour hand on the watch turned and turned, but the door was still tightly closed, and no one pushed it open from the outside. The guests on stage began to whisper, and Cornelius on stage became more and more uneasy. Cold sweat broke out in his clenched palms just as he was about to call Cassandra again. The door was pushed open with a bang. A white shadow slowly walked in. He was about to meet him subconsciously, but his steps suddenly stopped. It's just that it's not the bride who walks in, but a white coffin. In front of the coffin were several staff members in mourning clothes. Cornelius just stood there, watching the group of people carry the coffin towards him. The moment they lowered the coffin, he finally came to his senses and shouted angrily, "Who are you? Do you know what the occasion is? get out of here, but the staff at the head didn't seem to hear it, and walked up to him and bowed deeply. Mr. Cornelius, please pay your respects. There was even more anger in his eyes, and he grabbed the other man by the collar. What nonsense are you talking about? Get out of here. As soon as he threw the other man away, he was about to walk towards the coffin. But the moment he saw the face of the person lying inside, the whole person suddenly lost all his strength and fell to the ground with a thud. Cassandra, the staff walked up to him with a sad voice. Cassandra committed suicide by jumping into the sea 3 days ago due to major depression and was not recovered by the police until this morning. Please sign the death confirmation form. Cornelius couldn't hear anything. He stared at the person in the coffin. And for a moment he was a little surprised. It was not his Cassandra. His Cassandra had loved beauty since he was a child, and he would cry for a long time if there was a little injury on his body, for fear of leaving an ugly scar. Cassandra, who was lying in the coffin at the moment, was covered in scars, and his body was pale and swollen from the long soaking. So how could the person inside be his Cassandra? He jerked the lid of the coffin open with trembling hands, trying to see the body and find proof that she wasn't Cassandra, but after looking at it for a long time, he sadly found that the person inside was Cassandra. He trembled his hands to take Cassandra's hand, but several times he couldn't take hers. Cassandra, obedient, don't scare me, hurry up, okay, this joke is not funny at all. At the end of the words, there was a hint of crying, but the person in the coffin did not move. The staff came over to persuade him as if they couldn't stand it. Sir, please pay your respects. It is imperative to sign the death confirmation as soon as possible, so that the deceased can be buried in peace. Get out. Cornelius somehow got the strength to push the staff away, who said she was dead. She just fell asleep. No, no way. Cassandra loved him so much. How could he die? Seeing him go crazy, the staff handed him Cassandra's phone. Sir, this is the only relic we found at the scene of the deceased. You better take a look. Cornelius was stunned but took the phone and turned it on, and the unsightly dirty pictures and vocabulary broke into his eyes. The screen is full of photos and videos of him and Vanessa getting laid. His face turned pale in vain. She's got it all. When did she find out? He swiped the screen frantically, and finally flipped to the top. A month ago, Vanessa sent a photo of her bed. Tell you secretly, your fiancé is in my bed now. And the last text message was 3 days ago. Vanessa provokes her. Cassandra, even if you're getting married, he'll come and stay with me, just a phone call. If you are more interesting, quickly give me Mrs. Cornelius's place. This isn't the first time Vanessa has forced her to step aside. But it's the first time she's replied to Vanessa. Yes, as you wish. The short words were like a thunderbolt from the sky, and his eyes exploded black and black, and he clung to his chest and gasped. He couldn't hold back his screams any longer, and the overwhelming pain seemed to sweep away his whole body. Seeing him collapse, the staff couldn't bear to see it in their eyes, but they still handed him Cassandra's depression report. Sir, according to the report, Miss Cassandra went from depression to suicide in less than a month, and if she had intervened in time, Miss Cassandra would not have. The staff didn't say anything more, but Cornelius understood the meaning, and he opened the thick book of depression diagnoses, and every time Cassandra became ill was clearly recorded. On the day Cassandra first became ill, he had several scars on his hands, and he was coaxing Vanessa. The day Cassandra was found to have committed suicide and taken to the hospital, he was celebrating Vanessa's pregnancy and even had a live cam with her. On the day Cassandra committed suicide and jumped into the sea, he was talking to Vanessa, saying that even if I get married, I still love you and my children. Every time Cassandra commits suicide due to depression, he's with another woman, and he hadn't noticed her anomaly once. Even if he was aware of it, his heart was still pulled by another woman. Cornelius clutched his depression diagnosis, his fingers trembling. Tears fell to the cold marble floor, and then he covered his face with his hands and wept bitterly. The wedding of the century ended up being the funeral of the century. At the black and white funeral, Cornelius stood numb-eyed beside Cassandra's coffin, greeting the guests who had come to pay their respects. Mr. Cornelius, please pay your respects. Mr. Cornelius, please pay your respects. Mr. Cornelius, please pay your respects. Every guest who came to mourn saw him like this, and his face was full of regret. What a good pair. Why is it suddenly separated by yin and yang? The rain poured down, and Cornelius fell heavily to his knees in front of Cassandra's tombstone. The name carved on the tombstone stung his eyes. He trembled and raised his hand, caressing the name on the tombstone, and then leaned forward as best he could, hugged the tombstone tightly, and gently touched the name engraved on the seal with his forehead. Cassandra, sorry. Since that day, Cornelius has locked himself in his room and spends his days with wine. Delusional to get yourself drunk and meet Cassandra again. I don't know if she's disappointed in herself, but Cassandra hasn't been to his dreams once in the past few days. He threw away the empty bottle in his hand and let it gurgle into the corner. The next moment, a white hand picked up the empty wine bottle. Cornelius, why do you drink so much? He looked up and saw a white figure standing in front of him. The shape, the voice, was like Cassandra. Cassandra. He stumbled to his feet and took the man into his arms. Cassandra, is that you? You're finally willing to come to see me. Do you know how much I miss you? Vanessa, who was in her arms, was startled by his sudden hug and couldn't help but snort. But the person holding her didn't seem to hear it, and kept telling her about his remorse. Listening to him keep shouting Cassandra's name, Vanessa's eyes flashed with hatred. Why does he love Cassandra so much? Cassandra has been dead for so long. Can't he look back and see himself? Not to mention that she still has his child in her belly. Thinking of the child, she put away the hatred in her eyes and spoke softly. Cornelius, Vanessa. Like a hammer that slammed Cornelius out of his fantasies, he let go of Vanessa with a blur in his eyes, to clarity, to disgust and hatred. The next moment he reached out and grabbed Vanessa's neck, a storm brewing in his eyes. Vanessa, you're looking for death. In the next second, the woman was slammed onto the sofa by him. Vanessa was in pain. She subconsciously protected her lower abdomen, and looked at the man who was walking towards her step by step with a pale face. Cornelius. What's wrong with you? Cornelius looked at her coldly, and there was no more doting on her in his eyes. I warned you early in the morning not to appear in front of her. Why are you going to provoke her? Did you know that the stuff you sent her was going to kill her? Vanessa was stunned, then quickly sat up with her body bracketed, fear in her eyes as she knelt beside him with a thud, tears in her eyes. Cornelius, I don't want to be like that either. It's just that the thought that our children will be labeled illegitimate when they are born scares me. I don't want our kids to have that identity to do those things. I know it's wrong. Please forgive me for our children's sake, okay? Vanessa couldn't stop crying and shaking her head, delusionally wishing that the person in front of her would be generous once. But she forgot that Cornelius had been galloping through the mall for so many years, and he hated being threatened by others. Not to mention that this man was still the culprit who killed his beloved. He had been looking at Vanessa for a long time, and the pretty face that he used to like to look at the most had now become extremely ugly, and he felt a sense of disgust in his heart. Cornelius half-crouched, lifted the chin of the person in front of him with his hand, and sneered, "Forgive me, okay." Vanessa stopped crying and her eyes lit up. She knew that Cornelius loved her so much that she couldn't bear to cry. Before the smile on her lips could be raised, she heard his voice from hell, then go down and atone for her sins. Vanessa's face turned pale in vain, and she couldn't stop pleading with the man in front of her, begged him not to be so ruthless, but he remained unmoved. Finally, she let go of the hand that was holding his trouser legs, hung her head, and suddenly sneered, "Cornelius, do you think I really killed Cassandra?" She jerked her head up, her eyes full of mockery. "You took a fancy to my body first and threw me into bed. It was you who gave me all kinds of favors, bought me precious jewelry, took me to meet your brothers, your family, and told them that you love me and can give me anything but fame. It's you who left her to find me again and again. You allowed me to conceive your child. The reason why I dare to provoke her is not because you connived at me first. Now that she's dead, you're all on me." Cornelius looked gloomy and looked at her as if she were watching a joke. He was about to open his mouth when the door was pushed open again. Cornelius's mom rushed in and pushed him away, helping Vanessa to her knees. Then a slap was slapped hard in his face. "Are you crazy, Vanessa? She's pregnant. What if something happens to the baby?" Cornelius was slapped off her head, and it took a while before she turned to look at Cornelius's mom in front of her. "Kid, I wasn't going to ask for it." Cornelius's mom was so angry that she couldn't speak, and suddenly, as if she had thought of something, she turned her head and ordered the servant behind her, "Take her to the hospital for a checkup." "Stop." Seeing that Vanessa was about to be taken away, Cornelius hurriedly said that he and Vanessa had not yet settled their accounts, so how could he let her go? With that, he was about to grab Vanessa's hand, but Cornelius's mom stopped him first. "What are you still doing in a daze? Hurry up and take people away." Hearing Cornelius's mom's order, the maid hurriedly left with Vanessa. "Mom, what are you doing? She killed Cassandra. How can you let her go?" Cornelius's mom slapped him again in anger. "What killed Cassandra? She was unlucky. She died on her own. Besides, Vanessa is still pregnant with our grandson. What if something happens? And son, it's not me talking about you. Since Cassandra is dead, you should hurry up and marry Vanessa home. And then it will be difficult to wear a wedding dress when your belly is big. Cornelius's mom was about to say something, and Cornelius interrupted her. Enough, Mom, don't meddle in my affairs with Vanessa. After saying that, Cornelius stopped looking at Cornelius's mom, got up and was about to walk out the door, when he saw the assistant hurrying towards him. Mr. Cornelius, something has happened to the company, as soon as Cassandra died. Countless CP fans who knocked her and Cornelius collapsed, all of whom didn't believe that she really died of depression. The majority of fans inquired little by little about Cassandra's death, and finally let them find a clue. It was a live video that Vanessa's fans had unintentionally placed in a large group. Comes from Vanessa's previous live broadcast with Cornelius. Although there is no picture, but the male statement in it can be heard by everyone who is Cornelius. The entire network was paralyzed in an instant. Then more netizens picked up various evidences that Cornelius cheated on Vanessa, and when he cheated on Vanessa, Cassandra also suffered from depression because of it. So Cassandra didn't suffer from simple depression, but because of Cornelius's infidelity, she finally committed suicide. Then there were people in the know who anonymously sent out pregnancy test sheets for Vanessa's pregnancy, as well as various photos and videos of Cornelius fighting with Vanessa regardless of the venue, and those provocative text messages Vanessa sent to Cassandra. Soon, netizens rushed to Vanessa and Cornelius, as well as Kenneth's Twitter posts to angrily accuse them. They can imagine how desperate Cassandra was at that time to commit suicide by jumping into the sea. Overnight, the reputation of Vanessa, Cornelius, and Kenneth plummeted. Various partners have terminated the contract with Vanessa and asked her to pay hundreds of millions of liquidated damages, and even the former fans who turned black ran to Vanessa's hospital to block people, and all kinds of dirty things were thrown at her. If it weren't for Cornelius's mom to send bodyguards to guard her, Vanessa will be directly frightened of the miscarriage, and Cornelius has been a favorite wife for many years, so that as soon as his cheating was exposed, countless partners cancelled cooperation with the Kenneth family, and shareholders also withdrew their shares. If he was able to cheat on Cassandra after a decade of falling in love, it was possible that he would also backstab them after working with them for years. For a while, Kenneth's family was crumbling, and the stock fell all the way to the bottom. In order to stabilize the company, Cornelius and Cornelius's father lived directly in the company and were busy all day. And none of this has anything to do with Cassandra. Since her fake death, she has settled in New Zealand under a new identity. Now she has a new name, Wallace. Wallace loves the name and loves life now. When her parents divorced, she left a growth fund for her, plus the money Cornelius gave her over the years. She's doing a good job now. She opened a cafe in a small town, and every now and then a tourist or neighbor would come and chat with her, and when the conversation was finished, she would give her another cup of coffee that she had made herself. Gradually, everyone in the town knows that the proprietress of the coffee shop is beautiful and kind. Wallace, a familiar voice sounded overhead, and Wallace turned to look up at the man coming through the back door. Julius, why are you here? Julius smiled, leaned over and touched her head gently, making her ears flush. Even after all this time, she was still not used to his preference for her. When she first arrived in New Zealand, she was confused and helpless, and all she wanted was to escape Cornelius forever and never find herself. But when she fled, she didn't know what she was going to do next. At that time, it was Julius who reached out to her, took her to familiarize herself with the town, and helped her establish a foothold in the town little by little. After going back and forth, the two gradually became familiar with each other, but they never took that step, because she didn't dare to gamble anymore. Cornelius, who had loved her for 10 years and gave half his life for her, would cheat. She really doesn't have too much energy to invest in a new relationship and gamble on the outcome of a new relationship. Wallace thinks it's good right now. Julius knew what she meant and didn't keep his distance from her, just treating her like a sister. Didn't you say you wanted to eat hot pot that day? The hot pot is ready. Let's go. Go to my house now. Wallace's eyes lit up, and he quickly responded, grabbed 2 bottles of cider from the counter, closed the door, and followed him down Sunset's path. I just said it casually last time, but I didn't expect you to actually write it down. There is no Chinese supermarket in this town, so if you want to buy the corresponding hot pot ingredients, you can only go to the big cities farther away to buy them, and it takes 3 or 4 hours to drive back and forth. Julius smiled and didn't speak. Just opened the door to his villa for her, placed the pink slippers in front of her. Please, Wallace blushed slightly and thanked softly, then changed into slippers, looking at the steaming hot pot in front of him. Wallace handed the homebrewed fruit wine in his hand to Julius opposite. "This is my homemade wine with fruit wine. I hope you like it." He took it with a smile. "Then I'm going to have a good taste." The slightly sweet drink slid down his throat and made his eyes light up. "It tastes good." Wallace breathed a sigh of relief. The two ate hot pot with fruit wine until late at night. At this time, Wallace's scheduled alarm clock suddenly went off, and she hurriedly called for the person who was washing the dishes in the kitchen. "Brother Julius, come and see the aurora." The two sat on the carpet and watched the aurora in the sky through the glass on the roof. The aurora is ever-changing, with deep blues and soft emerald greens reflecting each other in the sky. And every moment is mesmerizing, as if you are in a dreamlike dreamland. Even though he's seen the aurora many times, Wallace is still so captivated by its beauty that he's lost track of time. Late at night, she naturally stayed in Julius's guest room, and after saying goodnight to him, Wallace lay on the bed and turned on TikTok to scroll through domestic videos. Suddenly, a video popped up. Cornelius, the former president of the Kenneth family, resigned due to personal problems, and now Lance, the eldest son of the Kenneth family, has taken over as president and led the Kenneth family to a new start. Wallace was in a trance for a moment when he saw the news. Soon after she left, Cornelius and Vanessa's affair came to light. Kenneth's family has a global presence, even as far away as New Zealand. As soon as Cornelius's derailment came out, not only did the domestic stock plummet, but even the branches outside were also deeply affected, and many branches were cancelled overnight, including those in New Zealand. When she saw the news, she thought she would be happy, because Cornelius hurt her so deeply, but strangely, there was no wave in her heart, as if she had really become a stranger with him. Thinking of this, she swiped directly over the video, and didn't put down her phone until her eyelids began to heavily, and fell asleep. When it dawned again, Wallace woke up to Julius having made breakfast. It wasn't until she had finished her breakfast that he handed her an invitation to the ball. "What is this?" Wallace took it curiously, and heard him explain. "This is a mid-autumn festival party held by the Chinese in the town, and the host of the party sent invitations to all the Chinese in the town. If you're interested, you can check it out, but if you don't want to, don't care." At this, a hint of chagrin flashed in Julius' eyes. He'd known Wallace for so long that he'd never seen her party. And it wasn't until he got to know her that he knew she liked quiet, not boisterous. Before handing it to her, he only thought about letting her go out for a walk and make a few more friends, but he forgot about it. Wallace didn't answer his question. "Just a curious rhetorical question. What about you? Do you want to go?" Julius was stunned for a moment, then smiled. "I can do it all." Wallace touched the invitation in his hand, hesitant. She actually likes to be lively, but since she faked her death, she didn't go to those parties in order to show her face less, because there are always people at the party who take videos and post them online. If she is recognized by someone familiar and sends it to Cornelius, then all the work she has done before will be in vain. And just in case, her coffee shop just opened a small windowsill for customers to take out, and customers only knew her voice but not her face. She bit her lip and smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, Julius, I'm afraid I won't be able to go." Julius smiled in understanding, and the two continued to talk for a while before he got up to see her off. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Wallace was eating mooncakes delivered by Julius in advance while looking at the full moon in the sky, counting up. She hasn't spent the Mid-Autumn Festival alone for a long time. When her parents were not divorced when she was a child, she was most looking forward to the Mid-Autumn Festival in addition to the Spring Festival. Her father, who was away from home that day, would make a special trip back, while her mother would cook a table of exquisite and delicious dishes. Later, after she was picked up by Cornelius, no matter how busy he was in the Mid-Autumn Festival, he would come back from work early to accompany her. Only later he went to accompany Vanessa. Since then, no one has accompanied her for the Mid-Autumn Festival. She rubbed the corners of her astringent eyes, ate the last piece of mooncake, and was about to get up to rest, when the doorbell suddenly rang. Opening the door, Julia's familiar face appeared in front of her. "Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, Wallace." Wallace was surprised. If she remembered correctly, Julius didn't go to the Chinese ball today, but she was still enjoying the full moon with her family who had traveled across the ocean. Julius smiled as he passed her the gift as if he had guessed what she was thinking. "My parents wanted to come to New Zealand, so they just stopped by to see me, and they went back to their villa after dinner." Wallace understood and hurriedly invited him in. Julius could see the leftover mooncakes on the table at a glance. that's all you have for dinner?" She nodded for a moment. And just as she wanted to say that she was not hungry, her stomach gurgled. She hurriedly covered her stomach, and her face was stained with a hint of redness. Julius sighed helplessly. "If I don't come, what if you have a stomach problem at night?" Because he was a frequent visitor to Wallace's house, he was familiar with the layout of her home. So he went straight to the kitchen and turned on the refrigerator to ask her, "Is fried rice okay?" She leaned at the kitchen door and nodded. Soon, a plate of fragrant fried rice was placed in front of her. In addition, he made a few more plates of stir-fry. Just as he was about to turn around and clean up the kitchen, Wallace reached out and pulled him. "Can you eat with me?" The two of them chatted while eating. Perhaps he didn't expect that there would be someone to accompany him during the Mid-Autumn Festival. Wallace released his long-term loneliness and grievances in front of Julius for the first time. At the end, she shed a few tears. "When I first came to New Zealand, I was prepared to be lonely for the rest of my life, because I didn't know the place well. I don't know what I'd do if I hadn't met you. I'm glad I met you." Julius listened quietly as she vented her loneliness, silently holding her hand without pushing her away. In the middle of the night, she leaned on his shoulder and fell asleep. He then carefully picked her up and put her back on the bed, before turning off the light. He gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and was about to turn away when her hand was suddenly grabbed by her. Julius turned around and heard her mutter, "Don't go." Somewhere in his heart, he felt inexplicably soft, and he took her hand back and said softly, "I'm right here, not going back." The sun shines through the light veil on the bed, and Wallace subconsciously wants to raise his hand to cover his eyes, but finds himself being held tightly in his arms. When she looked sideways, she saw Julius sleeping soundly. Wallace had seen him many times, but it was the first time she had seen him sleeping, and she couldn't help but reach out and trace his face. The next second, the man opened his eyes. He looked at her, did not speak, just reached out for her to hold the loose hair behind her ears. "Good morning." She looked at him before she smiled. "Good morning." After that day, the two still didn't pierce the middle layer of paper, but they were a little closer than before. For example, he will take the initiative to tell her the next itinerary. "You're going back home." Wallace looked up at him suddenly, his eyes full of confusion. As far as she knows, most of the Lawrence family's property is abroad, and very little is domestic. And since Julius's parents also decided to settle in New Zealand, the domestic property has been taken care of. Julius put the warm milk in front of her and smiled. The Kenneth family president was newly appointed and tied the knot with the daughter of the Manfred family, who were relatives of my mother's family. Therefore, as a mother's family, I also have to go to the ceremony. His fingers tapped on the tabletop, and suddenly hooked the corners of his mouth. "By the way, I'll help you fight back." Wallace clenched the cup tightly, and from Cornelius cheating until now, he was the first person to say he would help her fight back. Actually, in fact, she didn't care what happened to Cornelius. After all, he was now punished. Julius took her hand and said seriously, "Wallace, you're my important person, and I don't want to see you wronged. It's still so much of a grievance." At the airport, Wallace took the initiative to hug Julius in front of him. "Stay safe." Julius hugged her back, and it took a moment to let go of her and walk towards the gate, Kenneth's old home. Today's Kenneth family is not owned by Cornelius, but by his older half-brother, Lance. Because it was the wedding of the heirs of the family, the servants were extra attentive and got up early in the morning to decorate the villa. Behind a window in the annex building, Vanessa stood quietly, looking at the scene in front of her with envy. Since her affair with Cornelius was revealed, their status has plummeted, and she has nothing. Kenneth's parents were disgusted with her because of it, and Cornelius stayed home all night because of the photos she sent to Cassandra. If it weren't for the fact that she was about to give birth to the eldest grandson of the Kenneth family, she would have been living on the streets long ago. Thinking of this, she touched her stomach again, and a touch of sourness appeared at the corner of her mouth, because she knew who she was. After being taken back to Kenneth's house, she put away her former arrogant nature and became well-behaved and sensible. She takes whatever Kenneth's family gives. Kenneth didn't even mention it, and she never dared to ask. So until now, she and Cornelius have only received a license and have not had a wedding. She once fantasized about how she would marry into Kenneth's family after she forced Cassandra away. What a luxury it is. But now she is so embarrassed to hide behind the window, peeping at other people's weddings. Because she was pregnant, Cornelius's mom ordered her not to appear in front of the guests, but the real reason was that she was afraid of losing face. Even after all this time, when outsiders see her, they still unabashedly mention the events of the past, to laugh at her. to laugh at Cornelius, and at the Kenneth family. Someone even came to ask her how much a night it was. Vanessa was embarrassed, and in the end, it was Cornelius's mom who kicked her out with a calm face. In the end, he also warned her not to come out if she was fine. As the day dawned, the invited guests took their seats. Julius handed Lance the wedding gift and chatted with him casually. Just as he was about to leave, Lance suddenly spoke. "After all these years, you haven't planned to find someone to live with?" Julius rubbed his fingers together and smiled suddenly. "There's one, chasing." After the wedding, it was dinner. And Julius looked left and right with champagne, but there was no sign of Cornelius. Just as he wanted to ask, there was a sudden commotion from the annex not far away. Many of the guests were attracted by the noise and looked towards the source of the sound, and saw Cornelius holding a woman in a white dress behind her, looking at Vanessa in front of her with disgust on her face. Julius raised an eyebrow, and was about to take a step forward to take a closer look, when he saw the woman in the white dress turn her head. Suddenly he froze in place. Just because the face of the woman in the white dress is almost exactly the same as Wallace. In the distance, Vanessa pinched the palm of her hand. She had thought that these days of peace would be exchanged for a little mercy from Cornelius. But not only did he not have it, but he also brought back a woman who looked almost exactly like Cassandra. She's been the joke of the whole city for a long time. But Cornelius will continue to humiliate her. Cornelius, are you crazy? Cassandra has been dead for 800 years, and you can pretend to be affectionate and disgusting now. Cornelius' face sank sharply. Shut up. Cassandra is alive and well. What are you talking about? She was finally coaxed back by me, willing to accept me again. Accept my child. If you talk nonsense again, get out of here. Vanessa trembled with anger, and her face grew more and more pale. And the Cassandra behind Cornelius seemed to see the excitement and didn't think it was a big deal. Suddenly red in the corners of his eyes, and carefully pulled the corners of his clothes. Cornelius, Vanessa doesn't seem to like me very much. Or I'd better leave. Unable to suppress her anger as she watched her move be copied by another woman, Vanessa stretched out her long nails to scratch Cassandra's face. Shut up, slut. Before Vanessa's hand could reach out, Cornelius grabbed her hand, pushed it back, and then grabbed her neck and pressed against the wall. Vanessa, if you dare to hurt Cassandra one more time, you won't want to see the sun tomorrow again. After saying that, he stopped looking at the pale woman, and carefully helped Cassandra into the villa. Vanessa stiffened for a long time before she came to her senses, slumping to the floor, gasping for air. Almost closely, she was literally going to be strangled to death by Cornelius. Fear rose in her eyes, and she subconsciously wanted to flee from here, when suddenly there was a sharp pain under her body, and then a smell of blood came from below her. She suddenly turned white, and shouted in a panic to protect her stomach, "Kid, my baby, come on, save my child." Soon the maid from the villa arrived and hurriedly carried Vanessa into the car and rushed to the hospital. Not far away, the guests who watched a good show smashed their tongues and started talking. Even Julius watched with relish and chatted with the guests next to him. Didn't Cornelius' fiancée commit suicide? Doesn't he love his fiancée very much? How did he suddenly bring back a stand-in that is so similar to Cassandra? The guest next to him suddenly booed, looked left and right before whispering, "Just know it yourself, don't say it, especially not in the presence of Cornelius." Why? He raised an eyebrow curiously, and heard the guest next to him continue. Since he was ousted from power after his fiancée died, he has not been mentally normal, always saying that Cassandra is not dead, saying that Cassandra is just angry with him and running away from home temporarily, and that he is going to coax Cassandra back. At first, everyone thought he couldn't bear Cassandra's death, but one day he actually came back with a stand-in similar to Cassandra and said that it was Cassandra. The Kenneth family thought he was joking, but when they found out that he was true, they hurriedly forced him to be sent to the hospital for a checkup, only to learn that his memory was irritated. In his memory, Cassandra didn't commit suicide by jumping into the sea after learning that he was cheating, but just lost his temper and went abroad. He coaxed her for a long time before she was willing to come back with him, on the condition that she would divorce Vanessa after giving birth to her child and have a new wedding with her. At the end, the guests laughed, and Julius hooked the corners of his mouth. Originally, he wanted to do it himself, but now it seems that he doesn't need it. He turned on his phone and sent a text message to Wallace in New Zealand, who quickly replied with a question mark. He's sick, isn't he? Wallace, who was far away in the ocean, shuddered when he learned that Cornelius had found a stand-in. Only then did he continue to text him back, "Don't tell me about him anymore. I don't like to hear it." Only then did he take back his phone with satisfaction and look at Lance, who had rushed to deal with the news. On a big day, no one wants to encounter this kind of thing. And he pats Lance on the shoulder to express sympathy. Lance smiled bitterly at him and turned to look at the annex with anger in his eyes. It seems that Cornelius is no longer fit to stay at Kenneth's house. It wasn't until 3 days later, when the Manfred family had a homecoming party, that Julius heard the follow-up from Lance's mouth. Vanessa was frightened and the baby was born prematurely. And the baby suffered from an acquired heart attack and was sent to the ICU early. If it weren't for the fact that Kenneth's family was rich, the child would have been pronounced a death sentence long before the day he was born. And Vanessa's long-suppressed anger in her heart was vented because of a series of events. On the day Cornelius was forced by Cornelius's mom to apologize to Vanessa, Vanessa somehow got the strength to hold a knife and go to Cassandra Pocket. If it weren't for the quick eye of the bodyguard who came with him, Cassandra's face would have been ruined long ago. Seeing that her beloved's face was almost disfigured, Cornelius became angry and threatened to choke Vanessa's neck. As a result, Vanessa's group of brain-dead fans came out of nowhere and got directly into a scuffle with Cornelius. Before the argument, both of them rolled down the stairs and fainted, and they have not woken up to this day. As for the stand-in, the money that was scared for a long time ran away. Angry, Cornelius's mom almost suffered a stroke. Julius forced the corners of his mouth to be hooked, and took several sips of tea before saying casually, "And your Kenneth family is in the news again." After all, Vanessa didn't stay in the VIP ward, and when she argued with Cornelius, many patients saw it, and some even broadcast it live. Lance rubbed his brow tiredly. Cornelius and Vanessa had been messing with him every now and then since he took over as president of the Kenneth family. "I'm going to wait for them to wake up and then let them go back to their homes." Cornelius's mom was still making trouble at first, until he threatened Cornelius's mom to cut off Cornelius's family's financial resources if he made another fuss, and Cornelius's mom obediently shut up. By the time the Cornelius family moved out, no matter how much trouble they had, it was none of his business. "I'll send a statement then that the Cornelius family has nothing to do with the Kenneth family anymore. Lance doesn't want to clean up the mess for the family anymore." Julius didn't ask any more about it, just texted Wallace about it. And he started to prepare for his return to New Zealand. After being separated for so long, he missed her a little. After 3 months, Wallace met Julius again. The two hugged each other tightly and looked at each other without saying a word. It was a long time before she looked up from Julius' arms and smiled. "Long time no see." He curled his eyes and hugged her back. "Long time no see." The two of them held hands and turned around and walked towards the outside of the airport. But they didn't notice that a girl with a mobile phone not far behind them had her eyes wide open. Cornelius' half-sister, Michelle, pinched her wrist as they watched their backs leave. What did she see? She saw the live Cassandra. But she clearly remembered that Cassandra committed suicide by jumping into the sea, and even the cremation was witnessed by her. How can a man rise from the dead, unless Cassandra didn't die in the first place? Michelle had seen Cassandra very early, but she didn't think much of it at the time. After all, there were many similar people in this world, until Cassandra talked to the tall man and hugged him. Michelle was suspicious of Cassandra. She lowered her head and repeatedly played the video she had just taken secretly, carefully observing frame by frame. Finally, she sent the video to Lance with trembling hands. The reason why he didn't send it to Cornelius was because he was afraid that he would be stimulated and have an accident, and she wouldn't be able to tell if she was suffering at that time. Soon Lance's phone popped up. He didn't ask Cassandra about his current situation. He just said casually, "If you want Cornelius to die, send him this video." Michelle bit her lip, her face full of hesitation. It was her brother, after all, and she couldn't bear to let him go crazy again over Cassandra's affair. But she didn't want him to continue to indulge in fantasies and be decadent all day long. Eventually, she chose to send the video to Cornelius, and then she turned away. In the back seat of the car, Wallace listened to Julius talk about interesting things in China, and from time to time he picked up 2 sentences. As soon as he entered the living room, Julius's phone rang suddenly. He pressed the answer button, but when he heard the man's words, his face suddenly sank, and he turned his head to look at Wallace. Wallace didn't know why, but he hung up the phone and walked towards him, grabbing her. There was a tremor in his words. "Wallace," knowing that you are still alive. Julius didn't say it, but Wallace knew who he was, and her heart sank and she looked up at him. "So what?" Julius touched her head. "But don't worry, he won't come." Lance didn't allow him to do anything more, so he was trapped in the hospital. And now he has a broken leg and can't get out. Julius smiled, but a chill flashed in his eyes. When you came to pick me up at the airport, his sister inadvertently filmed it. And despite Lance's repeated warnings, she forwarded the video to him. Julius didn't go on for the rest of the words, just patted her on the back soothingly, telling her that everything was with him and that he wouldn't let the man find her. Wallace lowered her eyes. All she and Cornelius had said when they committed suicide that day, she didn't want to see him anymore and didn't want to hear his explanation. Cheating is cheating, and no reason is needed. The two of them sat on the couch and snuggled tightly. It's been quiet here, but there is a commotion in a hospital in China. Cornelius forcibly tries to break free from his bodyguards despite his legs, and wants to go to New Zealand to find Cassandra. Ever since Cassandra's death, he has refused to accept her death, even if he saw her corpse with his own eyes, even if he personally scattered her ashes into the sea. He had an inexplicable obsession in his heart. Cassandra didn't die. And in order to fool himself, he drank heavily all day and ended up finding a stand-in that resembled Cassandra with an 8-point resemblance. With the face of the stand-in, he began to make up false stories that deceived himself. It wasn't until Michelle sent a video that the moment he finally saw Cassandra alive that his dead heart finally came alive and the whole person came out of the fantasy. He didn't know how Cassandra faked her death and fled, or how she ended up in New Zealand. All he knew was that Cassandra was alive and she wasn't dead. The great ecstasy burst through his chest, and he was about to rush out of the hospital room to find her, despite his legs. He was going to tell her that he still loved her and that he had never forgotten her. He's going to propose to her again. But the bodyguard is like a solid wall. No matter how he collides, he doesn't move. At that moment, a tall figure hurried to the end of the corridor. The bodyguard saw Lance approaching and quickly released his restraints on Cornelius. Lance then punches him in the face. How long are you going to make trouble? Your sister told you the news that she was still alive to get you out of her decadence and fantasy. Not to let you go to her. You think about the things you did yourself. Do you still have the face to go to her? Do you think she'll forgive you? If she really wants to forgive you, she can just tell you, instead of directly faking your death and going incognito. Cornelius, how embarrassed are you? Punch after punch, Lance slammed into the man in front of him, with uncontrollable disgust in his eyes. He hated Cornelius for sleeping with other women while talking about his love for Cassandra. The second is that when Kenneth's family fell to the bottom because of his stock, he drank heavily all day and didn't ask about the world. Because of the initial recovery from a serious illness, Cornelius had no strength to resist at all, and was directly pressed to the ground by Lance and beaten. He curled up on the ground with a confused face, a trace of blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. Lance stopped looking at him, and turned to leave after instructing the bodyguards to keep watch. He was the only one left in the empty room. Cornelius finally couldn't take it anymore and groaned. Cassandra. Tears of remorse blurred his vision, and suddenly he remembered the time when he had been in a serious car accident. Cassandra didn't close his eyes for 3 days and 3 nights, staying by his side until he woke up. Everyone said that she was a good girl and told him to cherish her, but he eventually lost her. Sleeping with Vanessa was just a temporary hang. But Vanessa was more unrestrained and enthusiastic and bold in bed than Cassandra, so he gradually learned about Vanessa's marrow. Cornelius wanted to continue the relationship with Vanessa, because he was reluctant to give up her body. So he was not willing to let her kill the child after learning that she was pregnant, and even after he got married, he wanted to continue to keep this shady relationship with her. Cornelius even figured out what reason he would have in place to cheat Cassandra when he got married, so he could go on to Vanessa behind her back. But Cassandra is not a fool, and Vanessa is not a person who can be easily satisfied. His plan was exposed by Vanessa before it could be implemented. Cassandra will not hesitate to fake his death to run away from him, and Vanessa will not hesitate to lose her life to marry into his family. The former no longer loves him, and the latter marries him just for money. There is no one in the world who loves him as much as Cassandra. He covered his face in pain, choking silently. After Julia's persuasion, Wallace stopped focusing on Cornelius. She had an even harder thing now. Julius finally took the initiative to poke the paper between them and kissed her drunk, and she didn't resist because she was drunk. The two rolled together in a daze. Afterwards, Wallace thought to act as if nothing had happened. After all, everyone was an adult, but Julius, like a child, was tricked into holding her responsible. Looking at Julius, who was staring at her aggrievedly, she nodded after a moment of relent. Wallace stretched out his kiss-strewn arm and patted his face. Why did he agree in a daze? The man behind him heard the movement and reached out to take her into his arms, and a low, dark voice fell into her ears. Well, sleep a little longer. For the next few days, Wallace's feet never touched the ground. And Julius would always hold her firmly wherever she wanted to go. It was also because of the intimacy of these few days that Wallace discovered a different Julius. The day before yesterday, she drank a few more glasses of ice water, which caused her to die of pain during her menstrual period. All day long, he held himself in his arms, fed her brown sugar water, rubbed her belly, and even rubbed his big hands on her lower abdomen when he was handling work. She fell asleep and woke up in a daze. He took his big hand and muttered, "I'm much better. From your company, Lawrence's family has also moved to New Zealand one after another, and Julius should have been working in the company these days, but in order to accompany her, she has been working from home." Julius chuckled, lowered his head and kissed her forehead, and said softly, "It doesn't matter. If the group of people in the company can't function without me, then they don't have to continue to work. And now it's more important to be with you." It wasn't until Wallace was well that Julius drove her on a camping journey. The campsite was at Clifton Glampground in Hawke's Bay, where you sat in a hammock at the top of the hill and sipped local wine while watching the sun set over the sea in the distance. A drunken Wallace also let go of himself, pestering Julius to pick the stars. Julius smiled and hugged her tighter and tighter, and gently dropped a kiss on her forehead. "Okay, get some sleep. I'll take you to pick the stars tomorrow." "Okay." When Wallace woke up again, he saw himself sleeping in the RV with Julius whispering on the phone. Seeing her wake up, he kissed her outstretched hand and smiled. "Wake up, now I'll take you to pick the stars." Wallace is a drinker, and a person who wakes up and forgets. She looked at him with a puzzled expression. "What stars?" Julius hung up with a mysterious expression. "You'll find out when you get there." In order to pick the most beautiful star for Wallace, Julius called a friend at the jeweler early in the morning, ordered several sets of star jewelry, and waited for her to wake up and pick it up. At a friend's house, Julius's friend warmly invited them in, and when they sat down on the sofa, they asked the maid to bring them tea and dessert. Finally, he took out a few sets of star jewelry that Julius had ordered and put them in front of Wallace. Each set is adorned with a variety of sparkling gemstones that shine brightly in natural light. Although Wallace had seen a lot of different gem sets before, none of them could compare to the ones in front of him. Julius just looked at her with a smile in his eyes and didn't speak. Wallace had wanted him to give him some advice, but now he had to wrestle with it. In the end, she chose the set of jewelry on the far right. The whole set is set with sapphires. And the most attractive thing is the necklace in the middle. Gemstones are set in all aspects of the necklace. The whole necklace looks like a galaxy of bright stars, and the pendant part is composed of a delicate white gold ornament, and the petals are inlaid with small sapphires, like a blooming flower, exuding a charming fragrance. Julius raised an eyebrow and took the necklace out of the box and placed it around her neck, his eyes glinting. "This necklace flatters you very well." In the end, Julius bought not only the gem set she chose, but also the rest of the sets. She tugged at his hand and tried to say something, but he kissed her first. "Wallace, as long as you can be happy, I'm willing to spend as much as you want." Wallace looked up at him, and there was no one else in his eyes but himself. After Wallace and Julius' relationship stabilized, she finally nodded and agreed to return home with him to meet his family and friends back home. From the time he got off the plane to the Lawrence family's home, no one knew about Wallace's return to China, except for the Lawrence family's relatives and Julius's friends. Wallace was also very well protected by him, and she hadn't seen anyone other than the Lawrence family and Julius's friends, so she didn't know that Cornelius was standing on Lawrence outside the old house. "I waited for her in the rain for a night." Cornelius learned that Cassandra was back because she overheard Lance's conversation with the butler. In the past few months, Lance used his power to detain him in the country, and he was not allowed to go abroad to find Cassandra. Now Cassandra has finally returned to his homeland, to the capital. Naturally, he wanted to seize this opportunity, but until it got dark and the rain was pouring down, the people he was waiting for never appeared. Under the dim wall lamp, two entangled voices were reflected in the shadows. It wasn't until a muffled grunt came that Julius carried Wallace to the bathroom with a blanket. After another toss, she fell asleep in his arms. Julius kissed her, got up and crept out the door. "As soon as I got downstairs, the housekeeper greeted me." "Haven't left yet." Julius sat on the couch and took a sip of red wine. "Mr. Hui." He didn't leave, and it was still raining outside. Julius frowned, got up and walked out the door. In the dark of night, Julius held a black umbrella and looked coldly at Cornelius in front of him. "Mr. Cornelius looks idle." "Huh." At this time, Cornelius, whose face was pale, finally moved his body and looked at the man in front of him numbly. The sourness of the strong pressure in the throat finally overflowed the corners of the mouth. Although Lawrence's house never opened, he also saw the two intertwined figures on the second floor. Also know that it is Cassandra and Julius. He seemed to be able to see their intertwined appearance and her coquettish voice, and his heart hurt like a knife. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't, so he could only watch the lights in that room turn on and go out. Suddenly, he remembered the time when he and Vanessa were hanging out next to Cassandra, and whether Cassandra was in the same pain as he is now. In the past, he didn't understand that she would leave him so resolutely, and was even willing to fake her death. It wasn't until today that he experienced the scene she had experienced countless times, and he finally realized her despair. No one can be generous enough to watch those who love them mingle with others. He opened his mouth, and finally pleaded, Will I be able to meet her? All he could answer was a punch from Julius. What qualifications do you have to see her? The long rain made him stiff, and there was no chance to fight back. I could only staggered back in embarrassment. Julius took over the handkerchief handed to him, wiped his fist in disgust, and threw it at Cornelius' feet. Give Kenneth a call. With that, Julius didn't look at him anymore and turned and went into the villa. The door was closed tightly again in front of Cornelius. There was a loud thunderclap, and the lightning pierced the sky, illuminating his bloodless face, and he could no longer hold on, and fell to the ground staggeringly. For the next few days, Cornelius had a high fever from the rain and kept Cassandra's name in his mouth. Vanessa, who looked decadent next to her, sat numbly in her chair and looked at him motionlessly. Ever since she was blown up as a junior, to having difficulty giving birth to a child, to being entangled with Cornelius and falling down the stairs in a coma, and missing the last meeting with the child, her love for him has long since disappeared. And at this moment there is only hatred and helplessness left in her heart. She is now at this ending, all because of the person in front of her, but she knows very well that she was pampered by him a few years ago, and she has long lost the ability to live independently. She couldn't leave him. If she didn't have her, she really couldn't live, and no one wanted to hire a woman with a bad reputation. The only thing she could do now was hold on to him. Thinking of this, Vanessa moved her hand and pressed the ringtone next to her. Soon a group of doctors rushed in and gave Cornelius emergency treatment, and it was not until late at night that Cornelius finally woke up with a fever. After a serious illness, he looked at Vanessa in front of him and no longer had any more hatred. All that was left was relief. After all, both he and Vanessa are at fault for this, and they are both sorry for Cassandra. He looked at her for a long time and finally opened his mouth. Let's get a divorce. Like a thunderbolt from the sky, Vanessa's originally calm face instantly turned pale, and she shook her head frantically. No, I'm not divorced. She threw herself on her knees in front of him, tears streaming down her cheeks, and her words were full of pleading. Cornelius, please don't divorce me. What did I do badly? You tell me if it's good or not. I'll change. I'll change. Cornelius closed his eyes tiredly. You're at fault, and I'm at fault. So isn't it good for us to stop losses in time? Vanessa still wept and shook her head, refusing to divorce, but he continued as if he hadn't heard. After the divorce, my villa will be assigned to your name, and I will give you another 5 million loss fees. So let's get together and disperse. Vanessa was about to speak when Cornelius's mom burst into the room and slapped him in the face. What a divorce. If you get divorced again, your father will kick you out of Kenneth's house. And he will also take back all the shares in your name. What will you fight with your brother then? Besides, you can still have a child with her. In case your dad is happy, maybe your dad can let you go back to the company again. Cornelius covered her swollen face and burst out laughing. Now that he has lost even his most precious love, the money is no longer important to him. No matter how much Cornelius's mom tried to persuade her, Cornelius insisted on divorcing Vanessa. After a year, Cornelius and Vanessa are on the hot search again. The last time it was on the hot search was because the intimate photos and videos of the two were exposed. And this time it was because when they went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to go through the divorce procedures, Vanessa didn't know where to take out a knife and stab Cornelius straight at it. Fortunately, the staff next to her reacted in time and quickly pushed her away, which saved Cornelius's life. After dozens of hours of rescue, Cornelius was transferred to the ICU. As for when you will wake up, it's not clear. Vanessa was sentenced to 10 years in prison for intentional homicide. For the final ending of this pair, netizens applauded. Even Wallace, who inadvertently swiped the relevant video, couldn't help but sigh. Cornelius, who once had a lot of glory in the mall, would end up like this. she closed her eyes and suddenly remembered that when she was 16 years old, the high-spirited young man said that he would break out of the business world in the future, and when he was old, he would show off to his children, but now he can only lie on the hospital bed, relying on a ventilator to continue his life. Not to mention the future, even waking up has become unknown. She turned off her phone and was about to get up when the butler suddenly walked in, looking embarrassed. "Miss, there are people out there who claim to be your real parents who want to meet you." Wallace jerked his head up. "Who do you say wants to see me?" After the housekeeper's detailed explanation, Wallace finally heard that it was her parents, who had been divorced for many years and had formed a new family, who wanted to see her. It was only after she faked her death after those things happened that her biological parents finally remembered this abandoned daughter. And it was only because people could not be resurrected from death that they finally broke off the idea of coming to see her for the last time. "Now that I heard insiders say that she came back from the dead and was in China, I wanted to come and see her." Wallace listened silently, but there was no response, but Julius walked over and wrapped his arms around her waist. "They came to see you for a fake, and they came to ask the Lawrence family to invest for real." She looked at him puzzled and saw him pinch her nose. "Your father's company is on the verge of bankruptcy because of the problem of the capital chain, and your mother's new husband's company is also bankrupt due to poor management. They wanted to find me at first, but I have not paid attention to it, so they want to try it from your side." Wallace didn't have much of a surprise in his eyes. After all, it was clear from the fact that they left themselves behind when they divorced. They didn't love themselves. What's more, they now have their own families, and their love for her may have long since dispersed. Thinking of this, she didn't say much, just shook her head at the butler and was about to go upstairs to rest. As for the reaction of father and mother later, she didn't care. When the door learned that Wallace didn't want to see them, her father and mother were stunned at first, and then quarreled in disbelief. The butler looked at them coldly. "Neither of you showed up when Mademoiselle needed you the most. Why do you want her to help you now?" Both of them were stunned, but they couldn't say anything. In the blink of an eye, Wallace and Julius had been in China for almost a month, and during this month, he took her to meet all the friends and relatives of the Lawrence family, and also gained their deep love. On the day back to New Zealand, the sun was just right, and they reluctantly said goodbye to their friends and stepped on the plane home. In the ICU ward of the hospital, perhaps sensing Wallace's departure, Cornelius on the hospital bed also shed 2 lines of tears from the corners of his closed eyes. He remembered what she had asked herself a long time ago on the day she committed suicide. That if he fell in love with someone else, let him tell her, she would not pester him, and if he deceived her, she would not let him find her and see her for the rest of his life. Now that he had really deceived her, she didn't want to see her again. Then his heart began to ache, his breathing began to rapid, and the alarm suddenly sounded. A group of doctors rushed into the ward and began resuscitating him. The hour hand of the wall clock rang round and round, and finally the heart detector next to him suddenly sounded the alarm, and then it became a straight line. Even though he was accustomed to seeing life and death, the emergency doctor let out a long sigh. Obviously, everything in Cornelius was stable before. How can it be all of a sudden? Inform the family. On the day of Cornelius' funeral, Wallace and Julius also came, just standing quietly in the distance with black umbrellas, calmly watching them carry the coffin, put the coffin in the coffin, bow and release the flowers, and then seal the soil and erect the monument. Looking at one after another people dressed in black and holding umbrellas, they walked silently to Cornelius's tombstone, bowed 3 times, and left in silence. In the end, only Wallace and Julius were left in the cemetery. After an unknown amount of time, Wallace finally moved, and slowly walked to Cornelius' tombstone to look at the picture above. Cornelius on the tombstone is a teenager, smiling with love for her and hope for the future. Chapter 25. In a trance, she had countless memories of their past together. At the age of 6, he took her hand and firmly said to her parents, "You don't want her, I want her." At the age of 16, he mustered up the courage to confess to himself, saying that he only loved her in his life. At the age of 22, he used hundreds of millions of funds to propose to her, begging her not to leave him, saying that he would go crazy without her. At the age of 23, on the eve of their wedding, he cheated on Vanessa, and he began to cheat on her again and again, and began to stay up at night. At the age of 24, she committed suicide by jumping into the sea 3 days before their wedding, and they never saw each other again. At the age of 25, they met again, but they were separated by yin and yang. The hatred for him in her heart also disappeared at this moment. She didn't hate it anymore, just because he was not important, he was just a passerby in her life. Wallace could never have imagined that less than half a month after attending Cornelia's funeral, she would attend another funeral. The deceased was Vanessa. Vanessa, who was still serving her sentence, also died when she heard of Cornelia's death. She was not sad because of his death, but fearful, because after she lost her greatest support, she would be left with nothing when she was released from prison. Due to excessive worry and fear, Vanessa became mentally ill and was eventually taken to a psychiatric hospital and jumped to her death, because when she went crazy and stabbed someone, their certificates were not completed. So in the household register, she and Cornelius are still husband and wife. According to the rules of the circle, Vanessa was buried next to Cornelius' tombstone. Looking at the two tombstones nestled next to each other, Wallace evoked a hint of mockery. This is also good. After being entangled for a lifetime, I will continue to pester, and in the next life, I will continue to pester. Don't harm others. After attending 2 funerals, Wallace and Julius returned to New Zealand, in the villa. She leaned into his arms and quietly watched the TV in front of her. Julius took her hand and looked at her in silence, his eyes full of worry. Since his return, Wallace has not been in high spirits and has been listless in doing anything. So he took time out to take her out for a walk. From the lavender fields of Florence to the snow fields of the Alps to the Maple Grove Avenue in Canada. Wallace finally turned back to her old self, and she turned to look at Julius, who was laughing at her while driving, and took his hand. After going through the funerals of 2 people, she finally figured out a lot of things. I also figured out my heart for Julius, so at 5th Avenue at sunset, she took the initiative to kiss Julius on the lips. A year later, Wallace and Julius were married in a church, as the piano sounded. Wallace walked slowly into the church in her white wedding dress and walked to Julius' side. The moment the wedding ring was put on her hand, the person who had always been calm and self-contained turned red and cried, "Wallace, thank you for your willingness to marry me." Wallace smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "Julius, thank you for wishing to love me and give me a home." The moment the ceremony was completed, they kissed at the sound of the bell. After getting married, Wallace and Julius' lives are not much different from what they were before. She would still see him smiling at her at the first moment she opened her eyes. She will still get his goodnight kiss before going to bed. They are still the same as before. With 3 meals and 4 seasons, across the beautiful scenery of the world. From now on, for the rest of my life, I will have you.